We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange to. Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wright. It is the Ask Gibbo show tonight. How are you, John?
I'm good, my friend. A lot better after Saturday.
Yes, I bet.
Nerves have calmed down a little bit.
And sorry to confuse all of our viewers, but Christmas scheduling is always very difficult. This will be the last Gibbo show for a couple of weeks. We're going to rest this for a couple of weeks, obviously, with the Christmas festivities. It's always difficult the way the dates follow. So enjoy tonight, and we will be back with Gibbo on the 9th of January. But plenty to get our teeth into for the next hour. See, there's already a few questions coming in. Let's talk about the win. Great result, 4-0. I kept my feet on the ground. I mean, I was the one predicting a 2-2 draw in that one, John. I'm glad I was wrong. And comprehensive 4-0 win has to be said against a very poor Leicester team.
I was going to say, I'm thrilled to bits. It was what we needed. We played the right way. We played on the front foot. We played with energy. We played with appetite, like we wanted to win the game. I mean, Leicester were awful. Their away form so poor. They fielded 2 goalkeepers, Steve. One the first half, one the second half. They could have put them both in goal at the same time, and they would have still got a shellacking because they were absolutely awful. But you can only play what's in front of you, and we played what was in front of us very, very well. And there's a lot of people come out with pluses out of the game, and we know that we've gone in with a iffy attitude. Some of the players in the allegedly smaller games, this was not so there, and it was good to see, and it was a great relief. As you say, we were talking last week, Steve, about what a monumental week this is for Newcastle. Leicester home, Brentford home in the Carabao Cup, and then Ipswich away. And this can make or break our season. And this got off on the right foot, the Leicester match. So that was good. But it's got to be followed up. We too often this season we've taken 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. So it means that Wednesday is absolutely critical because we need to be in the semi-final of the League Cup. And then we've got to go to Ipswich and get the business done as well to steady the nerves, steady the ship, give us all a good Christmas because that takes us up to Christmas. And then let's go again.
Yeah, I mean, it was, a decent performance. There was a couple of standout performances of the weekend. I thought Lewis Hall, again, was superb, and Eddie Howe picked him out for special praise in his press conference today, which is quite unusual, although he was prompted by the media to do so. There was still a couple of missed chances in that game, though. I mean, 25 minutes in, Gibbo, we'd missed about 4 or 5 chances. I think that was the thing that concerned me. And I was sitting turning to my mate. I'd already given him my prediction of 2-2, and I was going, oh, no, this is going to be another one of them games.
We did miss a barrel load of opportunities before Jacob Murphy put us ahead. And Howard was only 1-0 at half time. I'll never know. But I was delighted that Jacob Murphy did score that one, not only because we needed to be a goal ahead, but because he'd missed a couple of easy chances himself. But in fairness, and yes, you were right. It was nerves, but we blew them away at the beginning of the second half. But I mean, in the last 3 games, we've scored 3 against Liverpool, 2 against Brentford, and 4 against Leicester. So we are scoring as well as missing. Unfortunately, we were letting them in, and it was good that we didn't let them in there. But I mean, Dubrovka, I mean, he doesn't need any new gloves for Christmas, right? Because they're not dirty, the ones he's got. It must be the easiest afternoon he's had in an awful long time. But I was pleased for the team. But I thought Lewis Hall was terrific. But I also thought on close examination, and this is not having a go at the young man because he's such a good player, he did what he's good at. When he's on the ball and he's in an offensive situation, there's nobody's better. His vision is great. His calmness is wonderful. His accuracy of pass is terrific. The only thing that I think he's still learning at, and bear in mind, he's what, 21 or something? Of course, he's still learning, despite him being now a full England international, is the defensive part of his game. He can get caught, and that's why I was delighted with him against Leicester, because there was moments in the previous 2 matches against Liverpool when he had Mo Salah against him, who was as warm as toast, and he had the Brentford boy against him, who he could have against him on Wednesday night. They sort of showed him that there were still things to learn defensively, although he's improving at such a rapid rate of knots. And there's nothing to be learned offensively because he was brought up as a midfield player, and it shows his calmness on the ball, his astuteness on the ball. He's going to be some player because he is learning defensively as well. Those 2 boys showed him that there is things to learn, but those 2 boys in particular will take most fullbacks because the record, the goal scoring record for wingers is phenomenal. But yes, he was excellent. I thought Gordon was back to his old self, looking bouncy and full of it. Tonali playing at the base of the midfield was tremendous. It's the best position for him. And you know what I like about him, Steve? And it's a small thing, but today, perhaps because the whole game is goes on and surrounds itself with stats, the whole of football these days, where it didn't do that 20 or 30 years ago, i.e. the need to complete your passes. So many players now pass sideways, don't they? So many passes are sideways and passes are completed, but you're playing in front of them. You're not penetrating them. Tonali brings the ball out from the back and he looks to pass forward. He looks to pass forward more than he looks to pass sideways. And that is such a good thing to see. And as for Isaac, well, he just keeps. I mean, not only is he a joy to watch because he's so easy on the eye, but I mean, do you realise now, Steve, that goal he scored against Leicester, that's 20 in the calendar year 2024, and that with the modern Newcastle, there's only 2 players have achieved that, scoring 20 in one calendar year, covering the end of one season and the beginning of another, and those 2 are Shearer and Andy Cole. Now that's good company to be kept in, isn't it? If he's in company with Alan Shearer and Andy Cole, who are 2 superb goal scorers throughout the whole of their career, because Andy scored a pile for Man U after he left us, then he's in good company. And also he's on 20. They were on, I think, 22 was Shearer one season, 24 for Cole, and then 27 or 29 for Shearer in one fabulous season. But there's still 4 matches left in 2024 for Isaac to add to that total. And he's been a standout player this year.
Yep, certainly has. Lots of questions coming in, John, so we'll jump into them. Roger says, stick or twist with Tino at right back. Would you consider putting Kieran Trippier back in at any stage, John? Because he's the next man in line, I would imagine.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And he's a reliable player. I don't think he's quite the player now at 34 he was when he come and joined us, which he was still in his pomp and he was still a regular England international. And he retired from that and was very astute to do that because he picked the right moment in the Euros and the change of manager, etc., etc. I do think he would be happy to go. He'd probably be happy to stay as well, but I think he would be happy to go in January. And I do think they might get rid of him in January because they've got to get rid of somebody in probably 2 or 3 if they're going to have any wiggle room. And he's one of them where he could do that. There's a temptation to put Trips in because you know what you get with him. But I mean, Livramento is going to be the future of Newcastle United. He is a Rolls Royce when he wants to play, and when he gets on form, not wants to play. That's not fair to the lad because he wants to play all the time. But when he's on top of his game, and if you're going to go and sell Trips in January, then this is not the time to drop Livramento and then have to stick him back in when Trips is gone. But I can see a reason, and there may be a time where to spread the load with the load that's coming up with Christmas and the New Year, that'll happen. But I mean, I would be very, very surprised indeed if he didn't start tomorrow with the 11 that he started against Leicester, because you know spreading the load isn't an option in my humble opinion in midweek because it's too big a game. I mean, they've got to get to the semi-final of the League Cup. They've got to keep our season alive, and therefore resting somebody's not, you know, like we rested Tonali and Gordon down at Brentford. Goodness knows why, but we did. I don't think you can start doing that against Brentford because it's a must-win. And so I would think if there's no injuries that we don't know about, no new injuries, and with Eddie there always can be because he doesn't tell you. If there's no new ones, then I think he could start with the side that started against Leicester tomorrow night.
What about the goalkeeper? Tom asks. He says, question for John, who would you play in goal tomorrow night? Would you stick with Dubravka or would you give Vlachimidos a chance? Now, been rumours circulating social media today that a Saudi club potentially could take Dubravka in January. So, I mean, it's reasonable that people would ask that question.
Yes, it is, and it's an intriguing one because Dubravka to Saudi seems a natural at this stage of his career for him and for us to get a fee. The water's been muddied by Pope's injury, hasn't it? Because when is he going to be back? I mean, he might, if we win tomorrow night, or should I say when we win tomorrow night, Pope is going to miss the first leg of the semi-final and probably the second leg. So, you know, I wouldn't go tomorrow night with our third choice goalkeeper. It's bad enough to have to go with our second choice goalkeeper. I would go with Dubravka tomorrow night and let the future take care of itself. There will be a problem. Will Pope get fit before January's out? I looked up the Saudi transfer window, knowing that I was coming on here, Steve, because it has in the past, in the summer, ended after hours, which would give Newcastle a bit of wiggle room. But the January window shuts on January the 30th. So the deal would have to be done for Dubravka to go there during January. But I mean, if heaven forbid, if we got knocked out against Brentford, you would let him go to Saudi, wouldn't you? Because you just have the league games and you play the Greek boy. I think long term, and I'm not talking about January, I'm talking about the summer. Newcastle will bring another goalkeeper in, probably Trafford from Burnley, and will get rid of people like Dubravka, Ruddy, and maybe Gillespie, although as the fourth choice keeper, fifth choice at the moment. He's way down the pecking order, and they're not going to get a fee for the lad. But I think the goalkeeping situation will be looked at. But I'd play Dubravka tomorrow night. We've got to get through. And the simple answer is Eddie knows what's going on day to day, and there's no faith in. Despite we only bought the Greek boy to do Forest a favour and get round this ridiculous rule of financial fair play, which is part of the Elliott thing. Obviously, we didn't want the guy, and I'm not having to go at the guy, and Newcastle aren't being offensive about him, but he wasn't on the radar. And you know, if you can't get to be the number 2 when you're Greek's number 1, you can't get to be a club number 2, and he essentially isn't a club number 2, then the manager has no faith in him, does he? So he's not going to readily promote him and say, right, you're going to play against Brentford and you're going to play throughout January in our side, because he could have done that the minute Pope was injured, couldn't he? So I think he'll stick with Dubrovka and see what happens after tomorrow night, see what happens in January. But if he can get rid of Dubrovka without creasing us in terms of Pope's injury, he unquestionably will do.
Tom Dixon says, great to see Botman making his return last night with the under-21s. And Roger says, are you happy about Botman, John?
I'm delighted, Roger. I'm delighted that he come back. To get an hour out of him is superb. It doesn't matter that it's the reserve side and the opposition's limited. It was Chelsea who've got a barrel load of players, and he was unscheduled. And to get an hour out of him is absolutely marvellous. He is still a little way short of being first team, of course, because he's had so long out and such a bad injury. That he will not be rushed back. And when he is back, it'll be bench and on for 5 minutes and then 20 minutes and then 30 minutes before he actually starts a game. So I think he's a little way off that. But the fact that he played for an hour last night, and as far as we know, and Eddie was up so early with the press conference this morning, he hadn't been able to check him in training today. He'll have done that now. But as far as we know, there was no after effects with Sven after the game. It's a massive step forward, and it's terrific because he is a good player. And the more hands to the pump, because in the last game down at Brentford, our 2 centre halves, Shaw and Byrne, were taken time and time again, and we've got limited cover there. Just Kelly, the new boy. So, and Botman is quality. We've seen that. We know how good he is. So that's a big plus for us, him coming back.
Gary says, what does John think Trippier and Miggy are worth? I mean, obviously, January's on the horizon. You know, potentially those 2 players we could sell. Do you think we'll get money for them, John? Or do you think this could be a situation where we might end up letting contracts run out and let them leave the club for free?
No, I don't think we'll let them leave for free. I think we will try to sell them, because even if we get a goldfish and 2 balloons, it's better than getting out at all. We won't. I mean, we're going to have to face the fact that we're going to get out for Callum Wilson, because he can't be sold in January and his contract's up in the summer. So unless the blind faith that's shown by Eddie makes him persuade the board to give him a 12-month extension to his contract, and heaven forbid, really, because we're just papering over cracks by doing that. No, Trips and Almiron are available this January for fees. We're not going to get much because we've missed opportunities to cash in from them, Steve. The last couple of windows we could have cashed in on them and got more than we'll get now. I mean, we're not going to get 10 million or anything near that for Trips because he's 34. And what are you going to get for Almiron? You probably started off at about 20 million and you're probably down to about 12 or 14 million now. But if you sell the 2 of them, and you get Kraft back to be cover for Livramento, then you might be able to get an outside right and another player as well. I think they will try to sell the 2 of them, and they'll try to sell Sean Longstaff in the same way as they sold Elliot Anderson, which is he's 100% profit, any fee you get from him because he's homegrown. But you're not going to get as much for Sean as you got for Elliot Anderson, because Elliot stars on the rise and he was a player on the rise. Sean is your honest to goodness pro, but he's not going to earn, but you're going to sell him for as much or more than certainly more than Trips, and maybe as much as Almiron. But we have got to start biting the bullet, Steve, and getting people out as well as getting them in, because otherwise we've got next to no leeway in the transfer window. And January is a difficult transfer month anyway, because people don't want to sell good players because they haven't got time to buy replacements. And they don't want to sell good players. For example, I don't think we particularly want Gay at the moment. I think that's been overtaken by the outside right necessity. But for example, I believe the thinking of Crystal Palace now is that even if Gay's contract, which is up at the end of the season, runs down and he leaves on a free, if he can keep them up, then he's still worth not selling in January because they'll make about 100 million or more out of remaining a Premier League club at the end of the season. So that's the fee that they would get in January from them. So they're better off keeping them, making certain they stay up, and then letting them go on a free if he won't sign a new contract, and he won't. So club, that is the sort of attitude that clubs can have in January. So it's a difficult month to do business in. But I tell you what, we often need to do business in it, Steve. Can you imagine if we went the whole of January and bought nobody? The morale on the terraces would be lower than a snake's belly, and it wouldn't be much better in the dressing room because they're looking for help. And Eddie would be pretty well on his uppers. We need a lift in January, and the only way we're going to get a lift through the transfer market.
Eddie's playing it down though, John, in the press conferences. I mean, is that a bit of psychology? Is that trying to lure people into a lower sense of security?
On everybody's a wonderful player in press conferences. Everybody's fit in press conferences. We're not going to sign anybody. He just keeps a tin lid on it, a tin hat on it, on all expectation. And I mean, he's been clever. And I think what he's trying to get across is that even though we will attempt to sign and will attempt to sell, he knows better than suggesting that January will be our saviour when the last two windows have been desperate. So, it's no good bouncing along and saying we'll do terrific in January. It's a difficult month to do terrific in if you've got a lot of money. And we haven't a lot of money that we're allowed to spend. So he is keeping a tin hat on it. He is playing it down. And my worry is if we don't move players out, it will be a poor window for us, Steve. We've got to move players out to get wiggle room to bring players in.
Despite his injury, do you think Wilson could go in January?
No. I mean, he's only got one leg at the moment, hasn't he? I mean, it's very difficult. No, I don't think he could go in January. And I tell you what, and this sounds, I mean, I wish I had the blind faith of Eddie, but Eddie thinks he's going to rise from his bed of nails and not only play for us, but get back in the England team. I mean, there's a pink pig flying past the window at Benton training ground, I think. I mean, that is as daft as you can get. But he does believe in him, and he says he's very infectious and an inspiration. I don't know. Bless Eddie. I don't know how's he getting inspired by Callum Wilson. He's killing the rest of us by his injury record. Although I stress what we already stressed last week. The injury record's not his fault, and he doesn't deserve the trolls that have had a go at him because he's always injured. Do you think he's doing it on purpose? It's his career that's been ground into the dirt, and it's awful for him. But I don't think we'll sell him in January. I don't think any club would take him in January because he won't be fit in January. And if I was him and I was going to leave Newcastle, I wouldn't go in January just to help the club. I would go at the end of the season on a free where I've got the summer to pick and choose whatever club will take a chance on me. So I think that's dead in the water in January.
Okay, just looking at some of the other comments as well. Tom Dixon says, Wilson was wanted by Atletico last window. We should have considered it. Stephen Anderson says, we rejected 12 million for Miggy in the summer. I believe it was Charlotte FC. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes football has a way of, unfortunately doing these kind of things. Wilson, fit, could have gone in the window, but, now obviously out for a couple of months and unlikely to go. And then you've got Miggy who, looked as if he could have gone to Charlotte. Then there was the talk of him going back to where he came from, but they couldn't afford the price. Then there was talk of going to Saudi, talk of him not potentially liking, the opportunity to go to Saudi. So, I guess we've got to face it. We're going to end up with some players, who will just stay or outstay their welcome, a bit like Ryan Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, and we all forget that, I'm talking about being fans because that's what we are, including myself, despite the job I've got. I'm basically a fan from, the beginning to the end. And the players can do what they want to do. We forget, I forget sometimes. It just slips your mind. You think, let's sell him and let's do it. First of all, somebody's got to want to play, and secondly, the player's got to be willing to go. Because if he's willing to sit on his contract, he can do that. And of course, I think that's one of the things. I think Newcastle have made up their mind that they want to sell Miggy this January. They've got to sell 2 players, 3 players. Miggy's the obvious one of them because it wouldn't weaken the team and you'd get a couple of quid from him. And, he's never started this season. He just doesn't start. And I think it's a deliberate ploy. We are going to build a club that Miggy's not part of. We're delighted for what he's done for this club, but all good things come to an end. He's going to go in January. So what do? You don't start him because you're sicking him, don't you? You're sicking him to where the lad's sitting there. He's saying Paraguay are telling him all the time, you need matches, you need matches. You can't just play international football and never get any football with your club. So that's virtually saying to Miggy, if you don't get back in the Newcastle side, you've got to get transferred. And I think the hope is that when somebody comes along this January and makes an offer for Miggy will be that sick of sitting on the bench. He must have splinters in his backside that he was sitting on that bench for the last 4 months, that he'll say, right, I'm off because at my age, I've got to play. I think that was a big mistake people like Dummy made. At Newcastle, where he just spent too long as an unused sub at Newcastle. And in his last 2 or 3 seasons in Newcastle, he hardly played at all. He hardly started at all. And, when you're in your 30s, your career is running down at a rapid rate enough to start with without sitting it out all the time. And I think Miggy needs a transfer. I think Newcastle have made it clear to him that they want him to go with grateful thanks because he's just not taking part in the current situation. And when you're 12th in the table, Steve, and you can't get a sniff, you must be able to put 2 and 2 together and realize it's 4, mustn't you? If you can't get the side that's 12th, then you haven't got a future at the club.
Jim 33 says, how is Malcolm doing nowadays? We haven't seen him around for a while. I mean, John, we were talking about this before we came on air. Do you just want to give everybody an update just on Mal, because I know you've spoken to him?
Of course, Jim, and for everybody else that's listening to this show, I've spoken to him for over an hour on the phone in the last few days. He phoned out of the blue. I was so pleased to hear from him. He was feeling a little bit better, so he could take the phone call and be happy to make a phone call, as opposed to if you phone him and he's not particularly in a good place or he's suffering physically at that moment, then it's not fair to the man. And so I wait for him to get in touch with me, or I get in touch in other ways and using Carol. And it's so frustrating for him. He's in pain. He's on painkillers. He is waiting for 2 ops, which will involve his hip and his back. But until he gets the rest of them put right, and they're trying to decide what is wrong in terms of fluid in the legs and various things, then he can't have the ops. So he's just getting ferried to hospitals for tests, etc., etc. And it's awful for the man because his lifeblood is his family and Newcastle United. And as far as Newcastle United is concerned, the television is salvation for him, watching matches on there, but he can't get up to his beloved St. James's Park, he can't do talk-ins, he can't do this podcast, and that's the things that brings joy into his life. And it's a great, great shame for me. I mean, he's in no mortal danger, if you know what I mean, and I'm delighted for that. But this is just continuously, and it's okay if you're seeing a few steps forward, but he's not going backwards. He's just standing still. But it's not good. But I keep telling him about how everybody loves him and who's like ourselves, like the people that will listen to this podcast, people that approach me in the street and at St James's Park on match days, all giving them the best. And I pass the whole lot on because you need the support mentally as well as physically. Otherwise, you get pretty well down. And Newcastle were getting them down anyway until Saturday, until we got a 4-0. So we've got to keep his spirits up, especially at Christmas and New Year.
Yep, certainly have. Thanks for all your comments in the chat, as always, John. And I will pass them on. And yeah, we're wishing Malcolm and Carol, a happier Christmas and hopefully a much happier New Year and a bit of resolve to his health issues. But yes, hopefully back on the show in 2025 and back at St James's Park. Quick ad break. Back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them by email, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk. Email info@mrvickys.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel, our fanzine sponsors. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2024 tours, 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. 2024 Travel and Tourism Award winners. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. You can find them at their website, media-arts.co.uk. Our podcast is now available on Sport Social Podcast Network. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, hit the thumb up under the video, and that likes the video. Click share to share to your other social media, and hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Or hit the join button if you want to financially support us. It costs $1.99 a month. Some dates for your diary. The NUFC Matters Christmas party is in aid of Newcastle Dog and Cat Shelter. Tickets £10 from newcastlelegends.com. The event takes place Saturday, 28th of December, 7 till 11 at the Tyneside Irish Centre. The Longstands are making a reunion in aid of Newcastle Dog and Cat Shelter Saturday, January the 4th at the Clooney. Tickets are £15 from the Clooney venue or newcastlelegends.com. Peter Beardsley will be at the Tyneside Irish Centre on January the 10th. Tickets available from Woucher or from newcastlelegends.com. And an evening with the Entertainers, 24th of January. Box office number 0191 243 1171 or website Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. The Lee Clark event is now taking place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 31st of January. Tickets available from Woucher. And an afternoon with Sir Les Ferdinand takes place the 6th of April 2025, 12 till 4 at the O2 City Hall in Newcastle. Tickets for that from ticketmaster.co.uk. We have limited fanzine subscriptions available. Go to the website newcastlelegends.com to order yours today. And Will Scott's book is also available from the same website, as well as the Backpage Shop, Waterstones, and WH Smith's. So big events coming up, Gibbo, in the new year. The Entertainers one, of course, in January, and Peter Beardsley, and then Sir Les, of course, a little bit later in the year. Some huge
big names. And I always remember the one you put on a year ago at the Tyne Theatre, absolutely packed out, and was with Keegan, Waddle and Beardo, and was a terrific show. And this Entertainers, and to get so many of them together and on one stage, I think we'll need a whip and a chair to get them all organised, the Lions up on their stand there. But it's fabulous to have those big names. Peter Beardsley, as we know, is a different class with the stories he's got to tell with his shows. And I mean, Les Ferdinand is what he is. He's Sir Les, made Sir Les by Geordies because he's absolutely adored for what he did in The Entertainers. So it's a big, big start to a new year and a very, very good start. I hope the team's half as good as the X-team you're assembling for various events, Steve. That would be nice.
Great stuff. Well, Gibbo's comparing those events. Joe Allen will be there as well to do a little bit of intro. So get yourself along to them if you can. Limited tickets for Peter's event. It's almost sold out. It's a smaller venue, of course. Entertainers almost sold out as well, which is great. And Celeste ticking along nicely. So get yourself along and have a night out. Come and meet your legends. Great start to the new year, though. Jim says, I grew up watching Malcolm. I hate to think he's in pain. I hope things improve. Best wishes to the legend. And lots of other well wishes to Malcolm as well, which again, as I say, we will pass on. Gary says Target would be the player for me. The most difficult to spell, especially if his rumoured wages are true. I often find the rumoured wages are tending to be slightly exaggerated, Gary. I think the only time we ever really find out who's on what is if somebody gets arrested and they get fined. You're usually a driving offence and they get fined 2 weeks' wages, and then we can all work out exactly what it is. But I always think that the figures that are chucked around aren't always accurate. Alan says, I agree, John. I don't think we'll buy anybody, but I'm not going to get massively disappointed against Simples, which a lot of people did in the summer, which is a point John made earlier on. Hopefully people are not going to get too disappointed this January. All the best to Mal. Thanks, Jeff. Much appreciated. Okay, let's get to another question. John says, does John think we will move to a bigger stadium? Lot to talk about this. Looks like we're going to find out in spring next year, John, what Newcastle's decision is. Are they going to build or are they going to move to Leazes Park, do you think?
Well, who knows? I mean, the simple answer is it's going to be a bigger stadium, whether it's St. James's Park or whether it's a move in a new stadium. That's the whole point of doing anything at all. I mean, you know, the funny thing, and I understand it, Steve, but the funny thing is, you know, when we got the takeover and we got Amanda, bless her, who was absolutely terrific and so bubbly and such a good communicator with the fans, and we were going to win the Premier League within X amount of time, and then we were going to win the Champions League within another few years, and we were going to have a bigger stadium, and we were going to have a new training ground. Well, the training ground's improved, but it's the same training ground with a few bits of wood popped onto it. St. James's will keep getting put back, and I know it's a momentous decision, and it's a one for a lifetime because St. James's Park has been there for 132 years, not in the shape and form it is now, but on that spot. It's decisions to be made, and I've got, you know, my heart has always been, Steve, that whatever happens, let us, if in a wonderful world we can stay at St. James's Park, I mean, obviously overhaul the whole kit and caboodle, but be on the same physical ground as we have been for 130 years. That's my preference. And I guess it still remains that way. But I have got so frustrated, I don't know about you, Steve, over the last two transfer windows, the last three transfer windows, at how limited we are in the transfer market because our income is so shoddy, having been run down by Ashley, who really did poor financial deals because he was much more interested in the money that the Premier League produced and as a closed peg for his sports gear. And so we've had so much ground to make up. We can't compete with Chelsea and we're a million miles off. Chelsea are selling hotels to themselves because there's so many companies with Chelsea. I mean, the reason they're being able to buy all these players is they sell hotels they own to another one of their companies, but it counts as an income from one to the other. And they've done the same with their women's team, etc. Other clubs have got that sort of wiggle room because their portfolio is a lot bigger than ours. And this is a long-winded way of saying that if the only way we can quicken up the pace that we're growing at, because we hoped it would be a quick pace, and it's a snail's pace because we're forced into that. If that means a new ground, a new stadium completely, then I think I would have to go along with that, as long as we're talking about it being as close to St James's, the current St James's Park, as possible. I don't want to move out into the sticks or anything of that nature. But I'm really getting anxious. Call it old age, my son. I want us to make all the moves and win things before I'm knocking on the box to ask if I can come out, because I want to see the cup that we've just won. So, I mean, time in on my side, but no, being serious, I think we've got to start making strides again. It's not our doing, but we're moving now at a snail's pace, having started off. And it's always the same, Steve. If you're going up Everest and you're a proper climber, if you're going up Everest, you get up the foothills at the bottom, don't you, pretty quickly. But as you get to the top, it's a bit slower. And our improvement has been pulled back. I mean, since we finished fourth, we finished seventh last season, and we're now 12th. Now we can still finish better than seventh with help in January, etc., etc. But we've got to watch. We're not going slowly backwards, Steve, from fourth to seventh to, at the moment, it's 12th, but the moment doesn't matter because it can improve. But, anything that will help us in some ways, and I never thought I'd hear myself saying this, to continue the improvement, not at a rapid rate, nuts, but just continue it, because it's a snail's pace at the moment. We don't know what's happening with the ground. We don't know what's happening with the training ground. We don't know what's happening with the transfer market and the club. We don't know if we're going to be able to keep holding off people that want Isaac and Gordon, who are so essential to us. We just want good news, don't we, Ken? We had wall-to-wall good news after the takeover, and we rose from being a relegation threatened team every season to one that went to fourth top. And I'm happy with the way that we have progressed in a short space of time, but we've got to continue to move forward. And we're not in the same playing field as somebody like Chelsea, which is so unfair. This financial fair play might have been brought in with all the goodwill in the world to make it where just the top financial clubs don't win the league every season. Maybe it was brought in for the right reasons, but it doesn't work in practice. What it does is stifle ambition. If you're not one of the top six, if you're not Chelsea, or you're not Arsenal, or you're not Liverpool or Man City, or yes, even Man United, if you're not one of them, you can't grow at any rapid rate, if not to challenge them, because the rules at the moment don't allow you to. It's like Houdini. You put on a straitjacket, you're thrown in the Tyne and told to swim. Well, give us a chance.
Yeah, no doubt about that, John. It's probably a good way of talking about it. Yes, Mark, sorry. With it being Christmas, mate, you've got to be aware things change and have to be fitted in around everybody else. And this is the last Gibbo show until the 9th of January. So
join us then, Mark. Come back then, my friend.
At least you're forewarned about that. All right, let's start looking ahead to the Brentford game. Carabao Cup quarter-final takes place tomorrow night. 7:45 kickoff. A result must be achieved on the night. If the score is tied after 90 minutes, of course, a penalty shootout will ensue. As was the case against Wimbledon and Chelsea earlier this season, the tie hasn't been chosen for live TV transmission, which means it'll be on Sky Sports Plus for those of you who are staying at home. Brentford took an initial allocation of 1,200 tickets for the game, so there will be a representation of their fan base there. Don't forget as well, if you are travelling through Gateshead, the A167 Gateshead Highway flyover is shut to all traffic This is after an inspection by structural engineers, which indicated a potential risk to safety if it remained open. So chaos is probably the best way to describe the roads in and around that area at this moment in time. There has been a train issue which has been resolved. It's the train that was reinstated. It was known as the LNER Ghost Train to Leeds. It's been resolved. So updated timetables now show that the train departing Newcastle at 22:57 means that there are 3 southbound services scheduled to run as follows. 10:01 is the Transpennine, the 22:23 is the Northern train, and the 22:57 LNER, which goes to Durham, Darlington, Northallerton, York and Leeds. So there you are. That's just all your travel information that you need as well. As for the team, Nick Pope, Callum Wilson, Emil Kraft and Jamal Lascelles are all unavailable, as is Sven Botman, although he is nearing a return after playing an under-21s match last night. Sean Longstaff serves a 1-match ban after cautions against Wimbledon and Chelsea in this competition. That's the way it works now. But Joe Linton, who did get booked on Saturday, is available to play tonight. His 1-match suspension will be served in the Premier League against Ipswich on Saturday. As for the visitors, Thomas Frank's side lost 2-1 at Chelsea in the Premier League on Sunday. Josh De Silva, Matthias Jensen, Aaron Hickey and Rico Henry are all unavailable for the match. Brentford made it to the last 8 of the competition by beating a trio of lower league opponents. They had a 1-0 win against Colchester United, a 3-1 win over Leyton Orient, and there was a penalty shootout victory over Sheffield Wednesday after a 1-1 draw at the G-Tech Stadium. This is only the 3rd time in Brentford's history that they've reached the last 8 of the League Cup, bowing out at the semi-final stage to Spurs in 2021, following a victory over Newcastle and then losing to Chelsea at the quarter-final stage in 21-22. The referee tomorrow night is Sam Barrett. The Yorkshire referee returns to St James's Park almost a year to the day after his only previous appointment, which saw Newcastle beat Fulham 3-0. And most importantly, VAR is not working, not applicable to this game. So, John, a chance for Newcastle to get back to the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. Robbed of that opportunity, unfortunately, last year in a game as well, which we were dominating.
Then, of course, we had it won, didn't we? We had it won. It was the 92nd minute when they scored to take a text, scored to level the scores, and we lost on a penalty shootout. And it was Trips, bless him, who had his pocket pinched, and they got the goal and went through. But I mean, it's interesting, and a lot of people have said to me, you know, Brentford, crikey, we lost 4-2 down there. They're a good side, and you know, we need revenge for that score. Not only did they score 4 against us, not only did they rip 3 points out of our grasp, but we committed suicide. All 4 goals were preventable. We made terrible mistakes. And let's be truthful, Steve. The team we are playing tomorrow night is not the team that beat us 4-2. I don't mean in personnel. I mean, in their records. It's quite staggering, the Brentford form this season in the Premier League. At home, they have won every single game bar one, which they drew. They haven't lost a game. That is the best home record in the whole of the Premier League. Better than Liverpool, Arsenal, and everybody else. They've got the best home record. Away from home, they've lost every single game in the Premier League bar one, which they drew. So they've never been beaten at home and never won away. And they've got the best home record in the Premier League and the joint worst away record in the Premier League with Southampton. They've only got 1 point on their travels in the Premier League. So it may be basically the same personnel, and I think they'll put out a strong side because the semi-finals at stake. You don't mess about. But they're not anything like the powerhouse they are at home. So it is a different side, and we've got to take advantage of that, Steve.
Yeah, it's a big game. It's a chance, as I say, to get through to a semi-final for Newcastle, which it's important for everybody to progress in cup competitions. But this is the one competition I do feel that Newcastle can win. And with the other ties taking place, Arsenal, Crystal Palace, and Southampton against Liverpool, they'd take place on Wednesday, and then Thursday night see Spurs take Manchester United. We know there's going to be some big teams left in this. I'd love to get one of those big teams in the in the semis, and then get through to a lesser team, if you like, in the final, if only. But John, how do you see this one going? Because we will look ahead to Ipswich as well.
Of course. I think we'll win. I do. I thought we would win against Leicester when you went 2-2. I didn't go anything like 4-0, of course, Steve, but I felt we would win because I felt they have a soft underbelly, Leicester, especially away from home. And I think the same with Brentford. It doesn't matter with Brentford. Why are they so unbeatable at home and so disastrous away? That's their problem. It's the same players, but they might have an attitude problem. But we don't care about that. We know that we're not playing the same side as knocked four past us. And by the way, that game was only 2 games gone, so we remember it well, and we want revenge for that, and we want revenge big time. And this is not the time, because we're still 12th in the league, although we beat Leicester 4-0, and on the day went up a couple of places when other teams completed the matches over the weekend. We're still in 12th place. We didn't even go up 1 place as a result of those 3 points. So we don't want to contemplate going to Ipswich with us 12th in the Premier League and out of the League Cup. It is absolutely essential we beat this. And yes, it looks in the semi-final that we would get Liverpool, Arsenal, and then either Spurs or Manchester United. And I would like either Spurs or Manchester United because they give you a real chance. But over 2 legs with a home leg in there, we've got a good chance. But first things first, we've got to take care of Brentford. And I do think we will. I don't care if it goes to penalties as long as we do, but I think we could well beat them inside the 90 minutes. Not by a major score like Leicester, but by, say, a single goal. And that would do me. But I do think at the end of the night, we'll be in the semi-final of the League Cup.
Okay, I'm going to go for a 2-1, John. I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think, Newcastle to edge it 2-1. We do travel to Portman Road for the first time since 2017 at the weekend. So with it being a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, there is no TV coverage. Sean Longstaff will be available after serving his 1-match suspension against Brentford in the Carabao Cup. But Joe Linton will be suspended as he reached the 5 yellow cards mark. Fabian Shaw and Sandro Tonali remain 1 yellow card away from an automatic 1-match suspension. Only got a couple more games to go, though, so if they can just hang on, then it goes to 10. They'll be all in the clear again. Some good news coming out of Ipswich for Newcastle is that Ipswich Town's top scorer, Liam Delap, who was taken the Premier League by storm this year, is serving a 1-match ban after collecting his 5th yellow card of the season, which was against Wolves on Saturday. He scored 6 of the 16 Premier League goals that Ipswich have scored this season. George Hurst will be missing out through injury. And the big news really coming out of Portman Road is that Kieran McKenna's side are yet to win on the home ground in the Premier League this season. They've lost 4 times and they've drawn the other 4. No referee confirmed yet at the moment. But John, thoughts about the Ipswich game?
Well, that's tempting. That's tempting fate when you say they haven't won at home. It's tempting. They've won two away, but they haven't won at home. It's tempting fate with us at the moment, isn't it? But no, I mean, honestly, I was about to say, and you've covered it, Steve, in what you've just said there. But if we think losing Big Joe is a blow, them losing Liam Delap is massive, mine, because he is their out. He is a quality player, a young boy, brought up properly at Man City through their academy. I would by the way, if we had him in January, and we won't because Chelsea want him and Juventus want him and Man City are talking about they might buy him back. But if we had him, we would be cooking on gas as the cover or the man to play with Isaac. That would be wonderful. His dad, you remember his dad, Rory Delap, the long throw at Stoke, used to throw it from the corner flag to the back post. Can you remember?
Yeah.
And this kid is the old-fashioned sort of centre forward. He's what I call Alan Shearer type of centre forward. You know, big, bustling, aggressive. Get out of my way, and I know where the net is. So I mean, you know, the two lads that are missing, Steve, are missing out of ridiculous circumstances. With Joe Linton, remember, Eddie was shouting to him on the field, "Don't get booked, Joe, don't get booked, Joe." And Joe says to him, "I won't, Gaffer," and then gets booked. I mean, well done, Joe. I mean, what was that all about? But if that was daft, what about Delap, that top goal scorer, the man that can keep them afloat this season? They've just won their second game against all the odds, and it was such a big result. The Wolves manager got the sack, but he got booked after the game. He got booked for getting into the shellacking that's going on after the game, where handbags and everybody's pushing everybody around. So he gets booked after the game and is going to be missing when they're going for their first home win of the season against us. I mean, I was thrilled to bits about that poor lad. I wish him all the best and he'll have a terrific career. But it's all good that he's not playing against us, because I tell you what, our two centre halves wouldn't fancy him pushing him around for an hour and a half. So I'm pleased he's out. We cannot afford to lose it. And I will emphasize again that we're still only 12th in the league, albeit that we're the same points as the two clubs immediately above us, but we're still only 12th. We've got to change that. And to change that, we've got to win. And I'm going to take us to win I don't think we'll lose. We'll very least get a draw. But with the lap out, I think we'll win very, very narrowly and probably biting my fingernails down to the elbows. But I think we'll win. I'm taking us for two more wins this week to make it a hat trick of wins. Leicester, Brentford, and Ipswich.
A couple of questions. John, can you remember a 5-4 defeat to Ipswich back in the 70s, says Davey?
I try not to, you know. When we lose and let in 5 goals, I don't lock them away in the back of my mind and think I will always want to remember those. I try to remember when we score 5, but yeah. But I mean, if you think of Ipswich, then they were a flipping good side. I mean, I've got a lot of admiration for them. I think they've made a better fist of it this season than Southampton have done. And even Leicester, they've been very unlucky. Their defeats have been very close. They were beaten Bournemouth 1-0 with about a couple of minutes to go, lost 2-1, etc. They've really made an effort. They've got a great young manager. They've got a great centre forward, Delap. They've got the best director who can do a sing-along I've ever heard, Ed Sheeran. So they've got 1 or 2 things going for them this season, but hopefully not 3 points on Saturday, which is all important. The gap between the Championship and the Premier League is huge, and that's been proven. I would just like to mention that to any Mackham that's contemplating coming up and taking 6 points off us next season. The gap, my dears, is huge.
Couple of questions here. Tom Dixon says, with question for John, with Longstaff banned, who would you play instead of him tomorrow night?
Well, I would just go with the 3 tomorrow night because he didn't start against Leicester. I would go with Tonali, Joe Linton, and Bruno. And then if you're losing Joe Linton out on Saturday, you've got to go either Longstaff or Willock, depending on whether Willock gets much of a game tomorrow night and how near to fitness he is, because he's a big worry fitness-wise. I mean, I'm concerned about him because he's a good quality player and a lovely young man. But his record's getting to be very close to Callum Wilson's, and I am worried about it. But I think you just go with the same 11 that started against Leicester tomorrow night, and then you look and play probably Longstaff down at Ipswich, but it could be Joe Willock if he was anywhere near the form that he can be at.
And the other question was from Gary. He says, Miley got 45 minutes last night. It was a planned substitution. Do you think he'll be on the bench tomorrow?
I hope so, because you can get 9 on the bench. You haven't got Longstaff on the bench, so there's a automatic position on the bench available there straight away. And the great thing, he was out for a long time. He got back from his injury. I can understand that he wanted to give him time in the reserves, and he's had a couple outings there because he needed some miles in his legs. I can understand that. But I don't want him to feel he's yesterday's man. You know, he played 17, 20, whatever games last season, and now he gets nowhere near the team. No, we don't want that. So I would love to see him on the bench tomorrow night.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win at Ipswich. I am confident we'll get 2 wins this week. So we're finishing with a bit of positivity for 2024. John, just want to thank you for giving up your time again this year. I know we do quite a bit together anyway during the year, face-to-face, doing the events. But you give up your time for free to come on the show, which I always appreciate. And let's hope 2025 reunites me, you and Supermac. Back on the show and back face to face very soon. All of our best wishes to Malcolm, of course, and enjoy the games over the Christmas period, John. Don't have too much wine.
Well, now you've just spoiled it. I mean, you've given a lovely speech there, and then you've told me I can't have a wine to celebrate all these 3 victories Newcastle are going to get. I just want to thank everybody, and because they've been tremendous, and sent all the questions in. Don't forget where we are next year. Stick with us. Enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your New Year. And as far as I'm concerned, have as much wine as you want, baby, because it's Christmas and New Year time.
Great stuff. Take care, John. See you soon, mate.
Take care, pal.